Hey, Delaney. We'll just wait for Dana to get in here before we get started.
Okay, I'm just trying to open it up.
So, this is the deal with what's going on with community clinical. So, did you guys meet yesterday and you did your thing yesterday, correct?
Yeah, it went till 10 at night.
So, anyway, I talked to Dean Newman about it, and he's like, oh, well, I guess I can't meet the expectations anymore, so I guess I need to give up my spot, you know? And we're like, what the heck? Who does that in the middle of the term like that? He shouldn't
Right.
have. He shouldn't have said that he could do this extra job at work if he, this was
Right.
already in
He already
place.
has it.
So I was just irritated with that. But anyway, so he's no more now. So you won't
Oh,
have him anymore. So
I wonder if he'll tell us that.
Rosa Kovac, you know who I'm talking about, Rosa.
Really?
You're gonna have her instead for the rest of the term.
Huh. Okay. We had her before.
Yeah, so it'll be fine.
Cool.
I'll catch her up on stuff that she needs to know, and it'll be fine. So technically, like I think it's week 8 and 9. You don't have clinical at all anyway, so it'll be fine. So we have a little bit of time to get that all situated again.
Cool.
So hopefully, you won't have any more issues with having crazy times.
You didn't publish the exam yet, right?
Here I thought I did. Let me see.
I can find it for you. Because normally it's just right under. This is week
This is week 7.
7, right?
It might just be in the wrong order or something. Let me go back here.
UTI. I did turn my ATIs in this morning before class.
Okay.
I just wanted to cover my butt and emailed you, but I haven't done.
Well, there's quite a few people who didn't do them at all, so that's why I did that, because it's like, my God, I can't give everyone a 0 or no one's going to pass the darn class.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I can't.
Um, oh, yeah, it's not showing. Okay. All right, now can you see it? Try to refresh.
Yes.
Okay. I guess I didn't publish it. I thought I did. Hey, Dana. All right, so
Hello.
we'll go ahead and get you guys going, okay? Drew, if you wanted to start now, you can. If you don't want
Okay.
to, that's fine too. These two always they get extra time, so that's why I come on here early for them. But
Oh, I'm the slowest, so I'll start now.
okay, all right. Let me give you guys the password and all that good stuff. I can't remember. So did I for test 1? Did I make it so that you could see all of the questions at once, or did you do one question at a time?
I know we saw them for at least one of the exams.
Dana, do you remember what I did?
I think we saw all the questions. I'm not sure.
Okay.
There was one of them that we did, but
because I can change the settings so that you can see everything. The only thing is, I hate doing that sometimes because then people go back and try and like change their answers all the time.
Yeah.
But I'll fix it so you can see everything. Okay, here is the um, I hate this land school. I cannot wait till we're back on campus and we don't have to do this crap anymore. Such a pain. All right, here we go. here's the land school thing. And then once you get that, here's your other thing.
Wants me to restart my computer again, so I'll be right back.
All right, while we're waiting for people to come back in here, I'm just going to tell you guys that are in here. I have the syllabus up here so we can just discuss what's going on the next couple weeks so everyone's on the same page. So this is week 7. We just had our test, so we're good there, and we'll go over some of our other stuff for today. But then week 8, so that's like finals week for all of the ADN students. So normally, they just do classes on Mondays and Tuesdays, right? So Wednesday, you normally would have class. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to record stuff and stick it online for you to listen to. So I also probably will have some kind of like discussion question that I make myself that isn't one that's already on there that I'll have you answer as well. And that'll show me that at least you have attendance for the week, So that's kind of what my plan is for week 8 because they have me going to do all that CPR stuff most of the day, so I won't be around. So I'll have it pre-recorded and I'll stick it on here so you guys can all listen to the stuff we would have been talking about, and then I'll have something for you guys to answer as in a form of a discussion question or a case study or something. So that's week 8. Then week 9, we don't have class because that's, part of the week of the 4th. So because we have so much to get through in this class, I will probably record again that stuff and have it put online for you. So again, you won't have to be counted for attendance that week because technically we wouldn't be in class, but I still want you to have the information. So I will go ahead and put that stuff online as well. And then when we come back week 10, it looks like we only have like the one chapter really to go over. So if that's the case, then we can kind of catch up a little bit on some of the other stuff that we didn't get to talk about together that day, so we should be okay. Just remember though that when you do come back to class week 10, you're going to have an ATI Pharm Practice A that's due. So it's probably a good idea to get that done ahead of time and just go ahead and turn it in so you don't forget about it. Being off all that period of time, you're going to end up forgetting, and then you're going to lose out on points. So just make sure you get that done, turn it in as soon as you can. So that's kind of where we're at with class, just so we all know what's going on. Okay, so today we've got what's that?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
It's more about peds. Like, we haven't had any information from. When does that start? Is that not till week 10 again, or is it week 9?
I'm sorry, you're cutting out, so I didn't catch everything you said. You're asking about clinical for peds?
For peds, yeah. When does it start?
Yeah, so when we get together on Monday for our review, I can go through some of that with you at that point as well, because I'm gonna I have to, like, Mrs. Vavrick is going to be your clinical instructor, and I have to email her and make sure she's on the same page with what's going on with everything. So I'll look at everything this weekend, make sure everyone's good, and you guys will know when you're starting and all that good stuff. Okay, so don't worry too much about that. We should be okay. The majority of your clinical hours, I mean, you got a ton of them done already, so you should be pretty good. Okay, another thing, let me do this real quick and show you this as well. So you know how we already did the one proctored test for OB, which y'all had a hard time with. So I'm going to show you a couple of things, which I don't know if it'll help you or not, but it might. So I'm going to show it to you now so that you could start doing it early if you want, because technically you'll have 2 more proctored exams to do. You'll have the peds one to do in OB and peds, and then you'll have the stupid pharm one to do in this class, which why they put it in community is beyond me. I don't know. But let me show you this real quick. Okay, so if you go to YouTube and you just like do in the search engine, if you put like ATI Peds or ATI, OB or ATI Farm, whatever, if you put that in there, there are some people who have done videos that will kind of help you in studying for that proctored exam. So this one here is about peds. So this girl here, she does, I think there's like 25 of these. So she's with this organization called Level Up RN, and she kind of goes through all of the important things in peds with you in each one of these videos. So like, not to say that it like goes right with your ATI book. It's probably slightly different, but it's pretty, pretty close. So you could probably do some of these videos to help you, get some of the concepts down that might be helpful, to do one, every so often, over the next so many weeks. Like I said, she's got 25 of these, and some of them aren't that long. Some of them are a little bit longer. It just depends. But yeah, so if you just type in ATI Peds, you'll see this. So it's Pediatric Nursing Level Up RN. The other one, I don't know if I still have it pulled up. Oh yeah, I do. Here we go. Can you guys see this? I don't know if, since I switched my screen, I don't know if you can see this or not. Can you see it?
Is it supposed to be playing?
Yeah, you don't see it. Okay, hold on. Let me reshare then. Can you see it now?
It's still not playing.
No, I'm not playing the video. I just want to see that you could see the screen. Can you see the
Yeah.
screen? Okay.
I can see it.
That's what I want to know. Okay. So this is the one that it's the same lady, Level Up RN. She does one for pharmacology as well. And so you see what I typed into the search engine here, ATI Pharmacology Proctored Exam 2019. So for this, she does quite a few videos. Let's see how many she has listed here. There's 41 of these, so there's a ton. Now, when you're looking through the videos, like you'll see, some of them maybe you don't need to watch, like this one's on pharmacokinetics. There's stuff about IV therapy. Like there's certain things that maybe you probably feel okay in that you maybe don't need this. But there's other medications that you probably aren't real familiar with. So this goes in categories. So like maybe you don't feel good about anxiety meds, so you'd go look at this anxiety video. Like she breaks it up into these different categories. So I think this might be helpful, and I would definitely try to do this at least for farm. If you don't do the one for peas, at least do this one for farm, because farm is very hard, and usually people don't do that well in it. So we want you guys to do as best as you can. So if you can do a little bit to help yourself, that would be good. So anyway, Level Up RN, I would check it out. Now, she has like an introduction video that I was watching before class here, and she was saying that, I don't know if she has like I don't know how you do it. She might say on the video, I wasn't paying close enough attention, but she has these cards that you can send away for. So if you're into like flashcard type stuff, she's got those. So you could do something like that as well. And she's got, like the website here and stuff you could go see if you needed to, and that's probably on there. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that so you have that as something that you could do to help yourself out with the proctored exam. All right, so now we'll get to our other stuff. Okay, so evidence-based practice, this is one of our things we're supposed to talk about today, which I find crazy because I feel like we've talked about this in I don't know how many other classes. So it should be a lot of review for you. So with this, we are defining evidence-based practice. We're trying to understand the relationship between it and nursing in the community, identifying barriers to evidence-based practice, some of those types of things. That's what we'll talk about in here. So when we talk evidence-based practice, we are saying it's an approach to providing the highest quality of healthcare in all settings to improve health outcomes. So the Institute of Medicine has set a goal that by 2020, the best available evidence will be used to make 90% of all healthcare decisions. Yet most nurses continue to be inconsistent in implementing evidence-based practice. So it's important to recognize that regardless of the level of education, everyone can be involved in the development, implementation, and evaluation of the effects of evidence-based practice. All right, so they have a lot of terms here, so we're going to kind of define each one of these terms. So evidence-based was a term that was attributed to this guy, Gordon Guyatt, a Canadian physician at McMaster University in 1992. Then they said, okay, evidence-based medicine. So this is the conscientious, explicit, and judicious use of current best evidence in making decisions about the care of individual clients. Evidence-based public health. So a public health endeavor in which there is an informed, explicit, and judicious use of evidence that has been derived from any of a variety of science and social science research and evaluation methods. All right, and then the next thing is evidence-based nursing. So this is an integration of the best evidence available, nursing expertise, and the values and preferences of the individuals, families, and communities who are served. So every time we talk about evidence-based practice, like a definition for it is, hey, we're getting the best evidence out there to use about whatever topic we're trying to find. Like say we're talking about, pressure ulcers or something. We're going to get the best evidence out there, use that, plus use your own experience. So, hey, in the past, I've seen that if I turn people every so often, they don't get pressure ulcers. So that's your experience, so you're going to use that. And then you also involve the patients and the families, and their preferences and things in this evidence-based practice. So if they don't want certain things done, or they do want certain things done, you're going to involve that into your care. So that's kind of evidence-based practice right there. Okay, external evidence. So this includes research and other evidence, whereas internal evidence would include your clinical experiences and the client's preferences. So again, what we were just talking about, so the research and actual stuff like that you're looking at, in a library or whatever, that's going to be your external evidence. And your internal evidence is going to be your patient's preferences and then all of your, other experience that you've had. Okay, and then applied to nursing, evidence-based practice includes the best available evidence from a variety of sources, including research studies, nursing experiences and expertise, and also community leaders. So then it goes in a little bit about history here. So research utilization has been defined as the process of transforming research knowledge into practice, and the use of research is to guide clinical practice. 3 divisions of nursing projects that shaped nursing evidence-based practice would have been Nursing Child Assessment Satellite Training Project. That was one of them. The Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education Regional Program for Nursing Research Development. And then the Conduct and Utilization of Research in Nursing Project. So they talk about something called a paradigm shift. So a paradigm shift is simply a change from old ways of knowing to new ways of knowing and practicing. The new paradigm, evidence-based medicine, acknowledged clinical experience as crucial but insufficient part of clinical decision-making. Systematic and unbiased record of clinical observations in the form of research will increase confidence in the knowledge gained from clinical experience. Okay, so then it gets into types of evidence. So as you're researching something, so say my example about, wounds or something, like you're trying to prevent pressure ulcers. So you would go to the library, you would look up pressure ulcers, and you would see how many different studies they had about that. And hopefully you would be able to narrow it down by looking at something specific about pressure ulcers. So this is listed in hierarchy of evidence. So the stuff that's at the top would be your best evidence. Like it will show you like no bias, and it'll be like the best type of evidence. So randomized controlled trials, that's our gold standard. So that's the very top. Then we have non-randomized clinical trials, quasi-experimental studies, case-controlled reports, qualitative studies, and then expert opinion. So expert opinion's at the bottom. It's not going to be the best type of evidence. Even though we say someone's an expert, that's just them saying something isn't proving anything. You need to have like studies done to show that, that's really true. Okay, so factors leading to change. So knowledge of research and current evidence would be something that would help us change that. Ability to interpret the meaning of the evidence, which I think a lot of people have a hard time with that when they go look stuff up. They don't know what certain things mean. Individual professionals' characteristics. The time needed to implement evidence-based practice and to engage in education and directed practice. And then hierarchy of the practice environment, level of support of managers, and ability to engage in autonomous practice. So, in my doctorate stuff that I'm doing right now, they talk about this quite often, the evidence-based practice stuff. And they say that some places actually have people who are like the champion evidence-based practice person on a unit. And so if there's people who are interested in learning about it or doing a project or something, they have that person to go to, and that person can kind of mentor and teach them how to do it, which is kind of nice. So I kind of wish it was like that everywhere, because when you first go to do some type of project or research or something, it's overwhelming, and sometimes you don't know exactly what to do, what's the next step. And this person can help guide you through that. Other things that can help lead to change would be the philosophy of the practice environment and the willingness to embrace evidence-based practice. If your hospital or facility is all about that, if they're like, hey, yes, I don't want to do anything but something that is proven to be the best, then sure, they're going to be behind you with doing this. Whereas some places, they don't care about that. So that's, if that's not the philosophy, then they're not going to be behind you about it if you want to do something. Resources available to engage evidence-based practice, practice characteristics, links to outside supports such as teaching facilities, and then political constraints and the lack of relevant and timely public health practice research. Oh, and I think on that last slide, wasn't it here? Yeah, so when it says time needed to implement it, that's the other thing. So like if you work on a floor and you work, your 40 hours a week or whatever, there's not much downtime, especially on certain units, and especially right now during all this craziness with COVID-19. So if you wanted to have some time to work on some kind of project where you're researching something, you generally don't have the time to do it because it's added to your other things that you have to do. So it's nice if you have someone who's really behind you with evidence-based practice, because certain places will actually give you like a day, or like how you get PTO days or something. They would give you a day that you could go and work on your research, or maybe every couple weeks you take a day, and they would be all about that. So that's kind of part of the problem. You just don't have enough time set aside to work on it. So with barriers, a lot of times it's a lack of resources. So again, with time, so hey, we're so busy and we have so many patients to take care of, and maybe you just don't have the time and money to be able to do this, to associate or to give someone a PTO day to do that. Maybe it's about computers. You don't have enough access to that type of resource to be able to do some of the things you need to do. And then knowledge, you know, sometimes people just don't have the knowledge about it and they don't know what to do or how to do it. Sometimes people are reluctant to accept findings. There's a resistance to questioning of long established practices. And then there's also problems with client non-compliance with recommended interventions. So like, say we're talking about peripheral venous disease with someone and we say, hey, according to all of this research, it says that if you put on compression stockings, this will help with this, this, and this. And then patients will look at you and be like, I don't know, that doesn't make much sense to me. And they're uncomfortable, so I'm just not going to wear them. So non-compliance is a big problem, you know? So you got to kind of get around that in some way so people can see the benefit of some of these types of interventions. And then when this is talking about resistance and reluctance about, you know, changing things. So I remember when I was at work still, when we went from paper charting to computer charting, which it seems like it's been forever ago, but it really hasn't been that long ago. And boy, physicians especially, some like physicians that were there for a long period of time at the hospital, they were so against it, it wasn't even funny. And they had a hard time like training people and getting them to do things right because they just didn't want to do it. They said there was no reason that we should have to do this, you know? It's crazy. All right, so we've talked about this before, so I won't beat this into the ground, but again, steps to the evidence-based practice process. So, hey, you have to have, cultivate a spirit of inquiry. So this means, hey, I noticed that there's a problem with such and such on my unit, so I need to figure out what I can do to help that. So that's your spirit of inquiry. So then you go, okay, what's my specific thing I want to find out? What am I trying to prove or figure out what to do with? So you ask a clinical question. And then you search for the best evidence about that. So you try to make your question a little bit more narrow so that when you look for evidence about it, you can, you know, not have 6,000 articles, but you can make it a little bit more focused. Then you look at your evidence. So you say, okay, what kind of evidence do I have? Is this a randomized controlled trial? Is this just something that an expert said, or what is this? And then you integrate that evidence with clinical expertise, client preferences, and values. And then you try to evaluate your outcomes of the practice decisions or changes based on evidence. And then you disseminate the evidence to other people. So you share it with other people so that they will know. Okay, which of these steps comes first in the evidence-based practice process? So it's going to be that spirit of inquiry, A. And then this is just reviewing it all again. Okay, so remember, new best practice evidence doesn't mean throwing out everything else. Instead, implementation involves integrating new evidence with clinical expertise, client preferences, and values. So these are some different approaches to finding evidence. So sometimes when you look for something, you'll see a systematic review was done. So this means it's a method of identifying, appraising, and synthesizing research evidence. The aim is to evaluate and interpret all available research that is relevant to a particular research question. So like I was saying a little bit ago about, say a pressure ulcer. So if you were doing that and you saw an article that was a systematic review, those are kind of good. You like those because someone has already done some of your work for you. So when you open up this article, this person has already looked at a certain number of articles and they have them summarized basically in this article, in the one thing. So it gives you a lot of information and it makes it a little bit simpler for you. A meta-analysis is a specific method of statistical synthesis used in some systematic reviews. in which the results from several studies are quantitatively combined and summarized, and a well-designed systematic review or meta-analysis can provide stronger evidence than a single randomized controlled trial. So yeah, it would be stronger evidence because it's numerous studies that they're looking at all in one, and they're combining everything to give you better evidence. So that always is a good thing if you see meta-analysis. And then integrative review is a form of systematic review that does not have the summary statistics found in a meta-analysis because of the limitations of the studies that are reviewed. So maybe some of the studies that they looked at weren't that great, so they didn't want to do a meta-analysis because it wouldn't have made it any better. And a narrative review is a review of published papers that support the reviewer's particular point of view or opinion. It's used to provide a general discussion of the topic reviewed and does not often include an explicit or systematic review process. Okay, and then they talk about how you should evaluate your evidence. So you grade the strength of evidence. So you look at the quality and you say, okay, what kind of study is this? What's their sample? Do they only have like 10 people in their study, or do they have 150? Because you would hope it would be a bigger sample, because the bigger your sample, the better the study would be, right? Randomization. Is it, hey, did they just take random people to do it, or did they assign certain people to do whatever they were doing? Because if they assign certain people, it's not going to be as good as if it were, hey, I'm just taking a random person off the street to do this. So those are some of the things you would look at for quality. And then you also look at quantity and consistency. So with consistency, that means if I went and did that study, would I get the same results as they would when they did it? Or if you did the study, would you get the same results? So how consistent is this study run? So down here below, it talks about the quality of the study refers to the extent to which bias is minimized. Quantity refers to the number of studies, the magnitude of the effect, and the sample size. And consistency refers to studies that have similar findings using similar and different study designs. Okay, so when we want to implement evidence-based practice, the first step is to recognize the current status of one's own practice. Remember that evidence-based practice is a new concept for a lot of people, and it's only going to be successful when practicing in an environment that supports it. So again, it's, it says, hey, you have to recognize what your own care is like first. So make sure you don't have bias in your own care. All right, and then current perspectives. So they say cost versus quality. So cost can be weighed against outcomes when evidence-based practice is used to show the best practices available to reduce possible harm to clients. Evidence-based practice cannot be applied as a universal remedy without attention to clients' differences. Nurses are obliged to ensure that evidence applied to practice is acceptable to the community. Establishing an evidence-based practice culture depends on the use of both qualitative and quantitative research approaches, or the best evidence available at the time. Finding resources to implement evidence-based practice will continue to be a challenge and require creative strategies. Although the internet is one source of evidence data, there may be a lack of quality indicators to evaluate the myriad of websites claiming to contain evidence-based information. And then, of course, we always go back and look at Healthy People 2020 objectives. So believe it or not, they actually have something on there about evidence-based practice. So they say it's good to use a systematic approach to improve health, which then makes sense. And then they say with evidence-based practice related objectives, they want to improve patients' understanding of evidence-based practice, and they want to improve the patient's understanding of how it contributes to healthcare decisions and how those are made. All right, and then remember back when we talked about that intervention wheel, I think it was in chapter 9. So this was originally developed using a qualitative grounded theory process, but did not include a systematic review of evidence to support the interventions or their applications to practice. So a systematic review done later to examine the evidence underlying the interventions and levels of practice was done. The 17 interventions grew out of an extensive analysis of the actual work of 200 practicing public health nurses in a variety of work settings. So because it was so many nurses that they were testing, that made it more of a reliable source, a reliable thing to look at. You had it was like a consistent thing, so everyone was able to get the same type of results, so that was good. So that's that chapter. Okay, and there's two more, believe it or not. So we've got chapter 25 next, I believe. There we go. All right, so this is talking about program management. All right, so in this chapter, they want to compare and contrast the program management process and the nursing process. They want to analyze the application of the program planning process to nursing and critique a program planning method to use in nursing practice. Analyze the components of program evaluation methods and techniques and compare different types of cost studies applied to program management. So they start off with a few different definitions. One of the first ones is community health planning. So the positions public's well-being above private interests. So when you're planning, doing some planning for a community, like say, like with your projects that you guys are doing, with those papers, like if you had a specific thing you're looking at, you put the community's well-being above other private interests. So if, like, say you came up with a certain problem that you wanted to focus on, you could come up with a program to address that problem. So a program is an organized, ongoing approach to meet the needs of a designated population or subpopulation. So I know, like, Drew sent me his thing about Canton. You guys are looking at Canton. So in that, he was saying that Canton has a really high crime rate. And like people are, really apt to have some type of crime committed, with them involved. So if you were thinking that was your thing to focus on, then you could come up with some kind of program to address crime in the neighborhood, maybe some kind of neighborhood watch thing or something along those lines. Or maybe you could even do like some kind of prevention thing where you teach people self-defense techniques or something, So it could be anything like that. So a project is a smaller organized activity with a limited time frame. So a program, would be ongoing, right? So the project would be, a smaller period of time. So maybe you only do it over so many weeks or something like that. And then planning, you want to select and implement activities designed to achieve improvements. All right, and then of course, if we do, some type of program, we want to make sure we evaluate it to make sure it's being effective. So ongoing process of judgments about improving, managing, and continuing the program. And then there's a couple different ways to evaluate. You can do a formative assessment or a summative assessment with, trying to evaluate this program. So formative is an ongoing assessment of objectives met and planning activities achieved. And then summative is an assessment of outcomes or follow-up of results. Okay, so which ensures that all planned activities are being implemented? This would be a formative evaluation, so A. And then they just review right here. Okay, so when we're talking goals, so again, like let's just say we're talking about that crime thing. So if we want to do program planning about that, we want to ensure that the healthcare services are acceptable, equal, efficient, and effective. So like with the crime thing, if we're trying to do a program planning for that, so we want to make sure that um, it's whatever we do with this program, it's accessible to multiple groups of people. It's not just one group. Maybe it's in different areas, so not just like location isn't a problem for certain people. We want to make sure that it's not a cost thing that people can't afford to do it, so they don't do it. And then we want to make sure that it's effective, right? So some of those types of things would be stuff that we'd be thinking about as we're trying to plan this program. With evaluation, you want to have accountability. You want to determine the relevance, adequacy, progress, efficiency, and effectiveness of the program, what kind of impact it's had on the community, and sustainability of the program or the project. You want to make sure it can keep going if that's the case. So if we did come up with some kind of community watch thing, we want to make sure that continues, that there's people that can teach other people about how to do this in their community, and we can keep it going. Sustainability is really important. Okay, with a historical overview here, we said there's been a steady growth in planning and evaluation. This started back in post World War II. They started evaluating program effectiveness. They thought, man, we need to really see if what we're doing is working or not. In the 70s, the laws provide more comprehensive structure and power over federal funds. In the 80s, we had the new federalism. In 1993, we started to get worry about healthcare reform. And then in 2010, we started to focus more on patient protection and safety kinds of things. All right, so here's some benefits of program planning. So if you plan really well for a program, it ensures that available resources are used to address the actual needs of the people. It focuses attention on what the organization and health provider are attempting to do for patients. It assists in identifying needed resources and activities. It reduces role ambiguity. It reduces uncertainty within the program environment. It increases the abilities of the provider and the agency to cope with the external environment, and it allows for quality decision making and better control over the actual program results by setting specific goals. All right, so when you're trying to come up with some type of thing that you need to do for your community, you do a community assessment first. And this is like what you guys did. You did your windshield survey and you went out and you looked at a certain community. So you want to look at the overall health status of the community. You want to identify maybe groups of people in the community who are at risk, and then document their health needs. So then as you look and you find that there's different issues in that community, you figure out which one do I want to address and how easy is it to address that, Then you look at the population needs assessment. So this focuses on a specific population or subpopulation. It identifies its health needs and resources available to address those needs. So maybe you're more worried about, going back to the whole violence and crime thing. Maybe you're more worried about older adults in the community because there's a big amount of older adults. And we know that they're a vulnerable population. And if there's a lot of crime and things, who's going to stick up for them or help them, So maybe you would focus more on them. All right, so with the planning process, formulating can be preactive, projecting a future need, reactive, defining the problem based on past needs, inactive, defining the problem on the basis of the existing health state of a population, to be served, or interactive, describing the problem using past and present data to project future population needs. A needs assessment is part of formulating and involves the following. So you need to look at size and distribution of the client population. You need to look at boundaries of the population, perspectives on the program, identify available resources. With detailing, this involves a consideration of each possible solution, evaluating weights each alternative against cost, benefits, and acceptability. All right, so when we do goals and objectives, so like say we want to, do a goal for this community that's having this issue with violence. So each program objective requires a strong action-oriented verb to specify the behavior that you want to see. So a statement of a single purpose, a statement of a single result, and a time frame for achieving that expected result. So this is just like the nursing process, right? When we do a care plan. So like if we wanted to, maybe we would say that this community is, or the older adults in this community are going to see a, trying to think, how do I want to say this? Maybe they would participate actively in this program that you're going to do to help, with, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example. Maybe you would say they would participate actively in a some kind of program where they learn how to protect themselves from violence. I don't know. I'm trying to think of how I want to put that. But anyway, that's kind of an example. So, and objectives are developed, and operational indicator for each objective should be considered so the evaluator knows when and if the objective has been met. So like the biggest thing that I see, like when I look at care plans, because I'm grading a bunch of them right now for my other class, people will write a goal that's too narrow or too like vague. They're not specific enough about what they're trying to accomplish. Like they might say, I'm trying to think of an example one that I just looked at. Someone was talking about impaired nutrition lesson body requirements for one of their patients, and they said something like, patient will consume an adequate amount of nutrients by the end of my shift, or something stupid like that. So what's an adequate amount of nutrients? What does that mean? So you have to be specific, and like what I tell everyone when I look at care plans is you have to have something that's objectively measured. So like for that girl, I said, something that you could have said instead would have been, hey, patient will take in at least 50% of their lunch tray by the end of my shift. So that's objectively measurable because you can tell me if they took 50% of their tray or not by looking at it, right? That's something you can measure. So that's kind of stuff that would work here as well. You have to make sure that whatever you write is something that you can actually measure, that it's not too vague. Okay, which of these is a specific measurable outcome? So our answer would be B, the objective. So it's like, hey, what do I want to see happen? Like when you're looking at nursing diagnoses, you say, okay, acute pain. So what do I want to see? I don't want to see my client in acute pain anymore. So what am I going to do? I'm going to write an objective that says patient will have a decrease in their pain level from a whatever to a whatever by the end of my shift. So you're making it measurable by giving it a number. All right, and then this is just review again for what we just talked about. Okay, so with program evaluation, you want to see the benefits of the program. So by evaluating it, you'll see if you did get good benefits or not. You want to plan for the evaluation process, do the evaluation process, and then the sources of the program evaluation would be with that. And then you look at the aspects of the evaluation. So when we look at benefits, so it ensures that a program has met its goals. It documents accountability to both clients and funding sources, shows whether a program is fulfilling its purpose. It's used to justify the sustaining of the program, making adjustments to it, expanding or reducing it, and possibly discontinuing the program. So part of the evaluation includes engaging stakeholders. So this means that anyone who would be involved, you want to make sure that they're involved in the process as much as possible. Describe the program really good. Focus on the evaluation design. Gather credible evidence. Justify your conclusions, and ensure use and share lessons learned. So if you learn something that's valuable to other communities, you want to share that with them, because then maybe they can implement it too and have a better health in their community. So that's very important. Okay, so planning with the evaluation process. We want to identify key people to include, meet to discuss how to proceed, decide to move forward, conduct a literature review, plan. So you would have that includes your method, your goals, your objectives, how you're going to measure them, and the population you're looking at specifically. Then you're going to write a plan to outline. So you're looking at your missions and goals, the type of evaluation, what you're going to do to carry this out, and available resources and personnel readiness. So it's kind of like a project plan. So some different sources of program evaluation. You have qualitative methods where you could do site visits and structured observations of interventions. And you could also do interviews where you do, talk to people and get their opinions about stuff. You also want to look at program records to see if those will help you with evaluating, if the program is good or not. And then also epidemiologic data, because that's going to help you with evaluating. All right, so with evaluation, we want to see if the program is relevant. Is there a need for it? Is it adequate? Does it address the extent of the need? And then with progress, we're looking at the tracking of the program activities to meet program objectives. So that has to be kind of set up ahead of time. You can't just say, oh, how am I going to evaluate this after the whole thing is done and over with, because you're not going to have a really good evaluation then. You need to plan for it ahead of time. So track the activities, to make sure the program outcomes are being met. Efficiency, relationship between the program outcomes and the resources spent. You always want to try and not spend as much money if you can help it. Effectiveness, this is the ability to meet program objectives and the results of program efforts. Impact is long-term changes in the patient population. And sustainability is enough resources to continue the program. All right, so this talks about advanced planning methods and evaluation models. So there's a few different ones they mentioned here. There's a program planning method, a multi-attribute utility technique, a planning approach to community health, which is also called PATCH, assessment protocol for excellence in public health, and then mobilizing for action through planning and partnership. When you talk about the program planning method, so this is a nominal group technique to involve clients more directly in planning. There's 5 stages to it. So you have the problem diagnosis using client input. That's the first stage. You have expert provider group that identifies solutions. You have a client and provider group that presents to the administrative group. And then alternative solutions are identified. And then the clients, providers, and administrators select the best plan. With this multi-attribute utility technique, this is where it's based on a decision theory. So you evaluate each element of a decision for how effective it is. So there's 10 steps to this. So steps 1 and 2 is where you formulate the problem. Step 3 is where you conceptualize alternatives. Steps 4 through 9 are where you identify, rank, rate, and quantify the criteria and calculate use of each option. And then the last one is step 10. This is where you select the best solution as identified in steps 4 through 9. So that patch approach, the planning approach to community health, so this emphasizes community participation, which is always good. So we want to mobilize the community, collect and analyze the data to support local health issues, choose health priorities, set objectives and standards, develop and implement multiple intervention strategies, evaluate the process, and secure support of the public health infrastructure within the target community. Then here's another one. This is assessment protocol for excellence in public health. So this is going to incorporate assessment, assurance, and policy development. So what happens is there's a process for assessing agency organization, there's a process for assessing communities, and there's a process for integrating plans for resolving health problems based on capacity, resources, and community members partnering to implement the plan. And then the MAP one. So this is the phases of that. So you have organize for success and partnership development, visioning, engage in 4 assessment processes, assess the ability to of the community to change, formulate goals and strategies, and then act. So the 4 assessment processes are outlined as follows. So this says you've got to assess the community for themes and strengths, identify issues, identify interest to the community, explore quality of life perceptions, identify community assets, assess the local public health system, identify all agencies and other partners who contribute to public health, measure each partner's capacity to participate and what can each partner contribute, measure the performance of each partner, how have they addressed issues in the past, assess the health status of the community, assess available data, quality of life, community risk factors, ability of the community to change, identify forces for change, and then identify forces that might be against change. So again, there's all those different types of models that you could do, to do this, but you want to evaluate these models and techniques to make sure, that they're good enough for what you're trying to do. So there's a structure, process, outcome evaluation that's called a Donabedian method for program evaluation. So you look at like how something is made up, like the program, the makeup of it. You look at the actual process of what they do. So step by step, what do they do in this process? And then you look at their outcomes to see, how this was met. The tracer method is useful for looking at efficiency, effectiveness, and effect of a program. And then case register may be used for evaluating and planning services, preventing disease, providing care, and monitoring changes in patterns in care. So program funding. So if you are trying to start up a new program, sometimes it's helpful to seek out funding from other places. So, you know, maybe there's a grant out there that you could try for, or, you know, maybe you get gifts from people in the community to contribute to it, or whatever, you know, so you kind of have to think of the funding to make sure you can sustain the program. All right, so that's that one. And then we got one more. All right, so this is looking at quality management in this one. So I don't know if you've ever worked at a company where they did like quality QI, quality assurance stuff. But anyway, this is really important. So you want to make sure that people are getting high quality care regardless. So this is an important thing to be looking at. So this is saying the Healthcare Research and Quality Act came about in 1999. So there actually is, I don't know if you guys have ever looked at this website, the AHRQ website. It's the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. It's actually a really good, helpful website with a bunch of topics on it. So you could go there and you can find like evidence-based research on there about different areas, and they look at like the best quality of what you should be doing for different things, and they give recommendations on there. So it's a good website. A lot of hospitals use that. National Healthcare Quality Report is another thing that you could look at. The Total Quality Management Philosophy. So this is a continuous quality improvement, and it involves teamwork. So down at the bottom here, it says, the Healthcare Research and Quality Act of 1999 mandates that the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality produce an annual report on healthcare quality, the National Healthcare Quality Report. So total quality management is a management philosophy that includes a focus on the client, continuous quality improvement, and teamwork. This total quality management refers to a management philosophy that focuses on the statistical processes by which to assess work done with the goal of organization-wide quality effectiveness. The term for this is often referred to as TQ, and both acronyms have the same meaning. Okay, so the Health Plan Employer Data and Information Set is a data collection arm of the National Committee for Quality Assurance. It provides performance information or report cards for managed care organizations. So, so basically there is kind of a report card for everyone anymore. So our society just is really wanting, you know, people to prove that they're getting quality care. So that's been a really big thing over the past so many years now. So where now you have kind of a report card that everyone has to do, and it's posted online, and you could go find it at pretty much about anyone. So like if I wanted to go look at Altman Hospital and look at their report card, I could pull it up and it would show me different quality indicators, like about falls, about sentinel events, about infection rates, you know, CAUTIs, urinary tract infections, that all that type of stuff. They're going to look at those quality indicators, and it'll give you kind of percentages of how many they have, and you could compare it then to a different hospital. Like if you had a choice of going to Altman or going to Mercy down in Canton, you could compare the two hospitals and see how one did compared to the other. So that's kind of how it is anymore with all of these different organizations. Okay, a quality healthcare system. So this is a good thing because we want to improve safety of care. It's going to help with safety. That's always a good thing. It's going to reduce cost by using effective interventions, and it's going to increase client confidence in healthcare delivery regardless of setting. So if you ever come up with some kind of project, if you guys ever get a chance to do that at your current work, like if you, you know, if one of you, I thought someone in class works at Cleveland Clinic. I thought, like anywhere that you work, you can have the opportunity to do like a quality improvement project. And if you can prove that your project saves the hospital money, sometimes they'll give you money as a reward. It's kind of nice. I know Suma used to do that. Okay, areas of performance for QIs. So here's some example type things. So consistently provide appropriate and effective care. We want to make sure we're consistent with what we're doing. Reduce unjustified geographic variation in care. So we don't want someone to be treated differently on the 6th floor compared to how they're treated on the 2nd floor. You know, everyone should be giving the same type of care everywhere. Eliminate avoidable mistakes. So, for instance, like, you know how there's certain medications that are like, they have like a high risk to them just because of the way that they're spelled, and they can get, you know, mixed up with other medications that look similar. So, like, sometimes you'll see pharmacy write them differently, like have certain letters in the name of the medicine enlarged or bigger, so you can it draws it to your attention, so you see that it's a different medication compared to what the other one is. Or there's different things like that that kind of help bring it to your attention to avoid a mistake. We want to lower access barriers. And we've talked about that all throughout this class about how there's barriers to care for certain people. So we want to try and lower that. Improve responsiveness to clients. So this is like, how quickly do you answer my call lights? You know, how often do you check on me? That kind of thing. Eliminate racial, ethnic, gender, socioeconomic, and other disparities and inequalities to access and treatment, which we kind of just talked about that. So the application of quality improvement strategies through these 6 areas of performance could affect both the process and outcomes of healthcare. All right, so healthy cities and healthy communities movement indicators. So healthy cities and healthy communities movement views community health and its determinants broadly, and they use this set of indicators to track their progress that reflects this broad definition. So these are the indicators. So they say physical and mental health status. We want to see that those are improving. Educational achievement. We want to see that we have a lot of people graduating from high school and that kind of thing in an area. We want to see economic prosperity, public safety, adequate housing and transportation, a clean and safe physical environment, and recreational and cultural opportunities. So those are things that would, you know, kind of say, hey, yes, this is a healthy community. Okay, the Institute of Medicine's definition of quality is the degree to which health services for individuals and populations increase the likelihood of desired health outcomes and are consistent with current professional knowledge. And remember that website I was just telling you about, the AHRQ defines quality health care as doing the right thing for the right client and having the best possible results. Quality in public health is defined as the degree to which policies, programs, services, and research for the population increase desired health outcomes and conditions in which the population can be healthy. So, which is not one of the components of the Juron Trilogy? This is supposed to be C, quality guarantee. So the Juron Trilogy is supposed to be quality planning, quality control, and quality improvement. It combines the components of quality assurance as well as CQI to improve client outcomes and healthcare delivery. Okay, so QI is quality improvement. So this is a systematic and continuous actions to achieve measurable improvements of care. So you kind of do that plan, do, check, act kind of a thing. And then quality assurance is accountability, responsibility for care, and consists of peer review. QA is concerned with the accountability of the provider and is only one tool in achieving the best client outcomes. Accountability means being responsible for care and answerable to the client. QA should consist of peer reviews leading to QI to improve the healthcare delivery. Client standards of care and safety issues are the core of QA. QI is defined as a systematic and continuous actions that lead to measurable improvements in healthcare services and the health status of targeted patient groups. QI in public health is the use of deliberate and defined improvement process, such as Plan, Do, Check, Act, which is focused on activities that are responsive to community needs and improving population health. It refers to a continuous and ongoing effort to achieve measurable improvements in the efficiency, effectiveness, performance, accountability, outcomes, and other indicators of quality in service or processes that achieve equity and improve the health of the community. All right, so this goes into a little bit of history about quality, insurance and stuff. So back in, the 1800s, when Florence Nightingale existed, she kind of had a part in increasing quality of care, right? So she would look at things that were going wrong as she was taking care of soldiers after that Crimean War. And she's like, geez, why are we getting these increased infections and everything? And then she would see that maybe there were unclean conditions and things. And she'd be like, oh, maybe that's what it is. Maybe if I washed my hands before I did this dressing, that maybe this would give me a better result. And she kept like details about all of that. And that's how she figured out that, yes, this was a good practice. She kept data about it all. Post World War II, emerging nursing profession was established on a scientific method of practice. We started to see that, yes, if we do the scientific method of how we do things, like this nursing process, this systematic way of doing things, then we're going to have better outcomes. In the 1950s, we started to see development of QA tools. In the 60s, the American Nurses Association created divisions of practice. We had standards for community health nursing practice. And then in 1972, Joint Commission of Accreditation of Hospitals came about, and we saw the Professional Review Organization. In 86, we had the National Health Quality Improvement Act, and then we saw ACHNE and the Quad Council, Education of Nurses and Scope and Standards of Public Health Nurses, that came about. We had a council on linkages between academia and public health practice, and then in 2003, it was also updated in 2014. There were core competencies for public health nurses that came about. So there's two basic approaches that exist in quality improvement. There is general approaches and specific approaches. The general approach involves a large governing or official body's evaluation of a person or an agency's ability to meet criteria or standards. A specific approach to quality improvement is a method used to manage a specific healthcare delivery system in an attempt to deliver care with outcomes that are acceptable to the consumer. QA and QI programs that evaluate provider and client interaction through compliance with standards historically have been used alone to monitor quality care. In a TQM management approach, CQI and QA/QI methods are integral, but not the only tools for ensuring quality of customer satisfaction. All right, so there's also some general approaches. So these terms are defined in the next two slides. So they talk about credentialing. So it's always nice to know that someone has really high credentials with something. If you know that you're being taken care of by someone that has a PhD, you think, wow, they're really smart. They know all this stuff. with license, that makes you feel better knowing that someone is licensed to do something, that they have certain skills that they've been, taught how to do, and they know a certain amount of things. Accreditation, when you think about schools, you're like, hey, they should have certain things that are a standard to live up to, right? That I want to make sure that my school has standards. I don't want to go to just any run of the mill school. I want to make sure that they're certified and they have accreditation. And then there's other things they have listed here, like charter recognition or academic degrees. So when we talk about credentialing, this is a formal recognition of a competent professional. It can be mandatory or voluntary. And then with licensure, it's a contract between the profession and the state. For accreditation, this is a voluntary approach to QI for institutions. For example, state boards accredit worthy nursing programs. And then certification combines licensure and accreditation. So like when you guys become a nurse, you can go and get a certification in something. So say you work in the ER and you want to get an ER certification. There is a certification for that. You could do that. Or if you want to get certified as like a medical surgical nurse, you could do that. Or a peds nurse or whatever. There's different certifications that you could get. And let me tell you this too, if you do decide to do that. So there was a time where they used to say, oh yeah, all these hospitals are going to more and more quality improvement stuff. So they thought that maybe people would start mandating that people get certified in different things, but it hasn't happened. I know back when I was still working at the hospital, I got certified. I had my PCCN, and you have to keep up with it. You have to do more CEUs if you're certified in something. So instead of getting the basic 24 every 2 years, you have to get like 100 or something. It's like a lot more. And you also have to take a test, just like you would for the NCLEX. It's very similar, except a little bit more intense. And you have to like renew, every so many years, and there's a fee to that. So it's kind of a pain, the certification in a way, unless you have an employer who will help you pay for it. So. Okay, general approaches. So there's a charter. This is the state's granting of corporate status to an institution. There is recognition, which is acceptance by one agency of the credentials conferred by another agency. And there's academic degrees, which is what you guys will have. So this is titles an individual earns from degree granting institutions for completing a predetermined plan of study. So that's what you guys will get. When we look at specific approaches, so TQM is a management philosophy using that's CQI method that incorporates many tools, including quality assurance to increase customer satisfaction with quality care. Quality assurance seeks to eliminate errors before negative outcomes occur. And then, so the quality improvement is the process of delivering healthcare. All right, so there's this person named Deming that has guidelines that are summarized in his 15-point program that, of course, we're going to talk about because that's what we have in here. So the first one is create, publish, and give to all employees a statement of the aims and purposes of the company or other organization. The management must demonstrate consistently their commitment to the statement. Number 2 says, learn the new philosophy, top management and everybody. Number 3 says, understand purpose of inspection for improvement of processes and reduction of costs. Number 4 says, end the practice of awarding business on the basis of price tag alone. Number 5 says, improve consistently or constantly and forever the system of production and service. institute training, teach and institute leadership, drive out fear, create trust, create a climate for innovation, optimize towards the aims and purposes of the company, the efforts of teams, groups, and staff areas, eliminate exhortations for the workforce, eliminate numerical quotes for the production, instead learn and institute methods for improvement, eliminate management by objective, instead learn the capabilities of processes and how to improve them, remove barriers that rob people of pride of workmanship, encourage education and self-improvement for everyone, and take action to accomplish the transformation. So that is this person Deming's 15-point program for TQM in healthcare. So this is also a approach to problem solving. So it's best in a flat organizational structure. It's empowered an interprofessional team, and there's this Stewart's Plan, Do, Act, or Check, Act cycle that comes with this as well. So with plan, we want to ask questions such as these. What could be the most important accomplishments of this team? What changes might be desirable? What data is available? Are new observations needed? If yes, plan a change or implement a test. Decide how to use the observation. For do, you want to carry out the change or test that you decided on. For check, you want to observe the effects of the change, study the results, and what did we learn? What can we predict? And then with act, repeat the cycle if the changes worked, or implement a different strategy. If the first plan was flawed, or revise the initial strategy based on the changes needed. Okay, so nurses need guidelines to reduce differences in care practices, to improve outcomes on the basis of the best research available, and to deliver effective care to individuals, communities, and populations. So they list some of these things that we can use as guidelines for how to improve outcomes. So again, there's Healthy People 2020. That's always a good place to look. There's evidence-based practice guidelines out there. There's an American Public Health Association model standards that you could look at. You know, there's quite a few different places. So using quality assurance and quality improvement helps agencies conform to standards required by external accrediting agencies. It provides a way to identify substandard care and to improve that care when standards are not met. QA is focused on problem detection, whereas CQI is focused on problem prevention and continuous improvement. So that's kind of interesting. I like that statement. All right, so traditional QA, so quality assurance. This is staff review committees, like where they do audits. There are two types. There's concurrent and retrospective. So the audit process consists of 6 steps. So you look at a topic for study, you select explicit criteria for quality care, you review records to determine whether the criteria is met, you do a peer review for all cases that do not meet criteria, and make specific recommendations to correct the problems, and follow up to determine whether they've been eliminated or not. So there's 2 types of peer review audits. There's concurrent audits used by Medicare and Medicaid to evaluate the care being received by public health and home health clients. And there's a retrospective audit or outcome audit that evaluates quality of care through evaluation of the nursing process at the end of a program, or as an audit of long-term impact of a program within the healthcare system. Each of these reviews assesses the appropriate cost of care Prospectively, care can be denied and money saved. Concurrently, services can be cut if they are not found to be essential. Retrospectively, payment can be denied if the provider or to the provider if the care was not necessary. Utilization review has several advantages. It helps clients avoid unnecessary care. Um, it may encourage clients to consider alternative care options such as home health care rather than hospital care. It can provide guidelines for staff and program development. It provides for agency accountability to the consumer. The major disadvantage of utilization review is that not all clients fit the classic picture presented by the explicit criteria used to determine approval or denial of care. So I got asked a long time ago to see if I wanted to do utilization review, and I said no, because I just don't see enjoying that as a job. But basically, these people that do utilization review, I would see them all the time in the hospital. They would come around and they would look at certain charts, and they have this like they have some kind of paper that they look at specific things and try to check off stuff if they have that or not. And it's just a pain. I hated that. You just feel like people are looking through all of your work with a fine-tooth comb, and I just did not like that. And to say that someone doesn't deserve payment for care or something, I just thought, oh, that's not my thing to say. Okay, and then traditional QA, this is risk management. It seeks to reduce the agency's liability because of grievances brought against it. Professional review organizations, also called QI organizations, exist as well. Professional standards review organizations. And then there's evaluative studies that look at process, outcome. There's the tracer method. And then we always, bottom line is we want patient satisfaction or client satisfaction. So a lot of times you'll see people do in-person or telephone interviews, mailed questionnaires. These are used to measure interventions used for client care, attitudes about care received, attitudes about the providers of care, perceptions of the situation or environment. So client satisfaction is another approach to measuring quality of care. Clients are often more critical of interpersonal and situational components of care than of the intervention of care. And then malpractice litigation is a specific approach to QA imposed on the healthcare delivery system by the legal system. For example, a public health nurse was individually sued by a family new to the community because the nurse repeated an immunization the child had already received prior to moving to the community. The result was Guillain-Barré syndrome. The nurse was found at fault even though the parents did not provide the physician's record of immunizations to the nurse. It was the nurse's responsibility to follow standard guidelines and to obtain the essential records prior to providing the immunization. The public health department was dismissed from the lawsuit because of immunity granted to state agencies. All right, so a model CQI program would have a good structure. The process would, look pretty effective and efficient, and the outcomes would be really good. And then you would also have a good evaluation system to interpret, how things are going and what they can do to improve. This picture shows a model that identifies the basic components of a QI program. QI programs answer the following questions about healthcare services and nursing care. They look at what's being done now, why it's being done, is it being done well, can it be done better, should it be done at all, are there improved ways to deliver the service, how much does it cost, should certain activities be abandoned or replaced. And then here's that plan, do, check, act model. So plan, we recognize an opportunity and plan a change. Do, we test the change, carry out on a small scale study. And check, we review the data, analyze the results, and identify what has been learned. and then we act. We take action based on what was learned in the check study step. If the change did not work, we go through the cycle again with a different plan. If successful, we incorporate what you learned from the test into wider changes. Use what was learned to plan new improvements and begin the cycle again. Beginning the cycle again defines the continuous program of CQI. This is also referred to as a rapid cycle improvement process in healthcare. All right, when we look at the structure of something, we want to look at their vision, values, and philosophy. In evaluating the structure, the evaluator determines whether the agency is adhering to their philosophy and objectives. So like if they're saying they want to be, the place to go for certain things, you want to make sure that they're living up to that. When you look at the process, it's a specific look at the quality of care being given by agency providers. So you can do this by doing a peer review committee, getting surveys from clients, direct observation, questionnaires, interviews, written audits, videotape of client and provider encounters. And then with outcome. Outcome evaluation assumes that healthcare has a positive effect on client status. The major problem with outcome evaluation is determining which nursing care activities are primarily responsible for causing changes in client status. All right, and here's some different types of problems that were studied. These are kind of examples of QA problems. So like client deaths, population mortality, client injury, increased costs, lack of resources, documenting of care. Those are some examples. All right, so evaluation at regular intervals. We want to make sure we do that. Interpretation of findings. We look at the total agency's functioning over time, identify their strengths and weaknesses, take action to correct the weaknesses. Decisions are made of courses of action based on importance, cost, and timeliness, and then we want to follow up and reevaluate. With records, documentation is essential to evaluating quality care of any organization. We want accurate and complete documentation. That's super important. And then the use of community and public health agency records. This is going to predict trends and identify health needs, to prepare budgets and make administrative decisions, to maintain administrative control. Other service records would be central indexing system, annual implementation plan, annual summary of agency activities. All right, so that's our stuff for today. You guys did a really good job on your tests, so I'm happy with that. So I will go ahead and send you guys an email with like practice questions for these chapters again. Did you guys think that helped you for this test at all? You want me to keep doing that?
Yes.
Okay. So we won't go over them today. I'll just send them to you today because we've been on here forever. So we'll just go ahead and get off. But is everyone clear on what's going on for the next couple weeks? I know I said it earlier, and I recorded this, so even if you didn't hear me say it, you can rewatch and hear it. But so remember, week 8 next week, I will record your information that you're going to need for next week. So you technically will not have to be sitting in class, but I want you to watch it at some point. And then I'm going to put on some kind of case study or some type of questions or something that I want you to answer. And I'll put some spot where I want you to put it. I'll make some kind of Dropbox or whatever. But I want you to do that because that's going to show me your attendance for that day. So it doesn't mean that you have to like sit in class all that time, but definitely at least do that for me. And then the following week we won't have class, but you'll still have things recorded again because that will be the week of the 4th. So just kind of be aware of those things and make sure you're looking at what's coming up that's due. If if there's something that's due soon, make sure you get it done, so you don't forget over break or something. So get it done ahead of time so you don't get messed up with your points.
But next week for the exam, we're still getting on like the normal time to take the exam with whoever's going to be with us, right? And then
Correct.
we'll just get off and then watch the lectures you post.
Correct.
Okay, sweet.
Okay. So really just remember for this class, you specifically just need to answer whatever questions or case study or whatever that I put up for you and turn that in. And that's going to show me your attendance for that day for next week, week 8. Okay? All right, guys, I will see you later. Thanks for coming back.